Oh, thanks, Carlos. Welcome, everyone, to the District of Squamish Advisory Design Panel meeting for February 20th. We're here today on Squamish Nation Traditional Territory. For the first item, I would like to adopt the agenda. Do I have someone to move that? Carlos, second by Luke. Any opposed to adoption of the agenda? Any changes? All good? Okay. Next, can we adopt the minutes from the January 16th meeting? Can I have someone to move adoption of the minutes? Who was at that meeting? Got a mover, second. Second by Luke again. Any opposed? Michael, thank you. Okay, I don't see any opposed, so that is that. On to the business. We're going to be reviewing the Garibaldi Springs Phase 3 development permit application today, and I think we'll have Jessie Abraham introduce it.
Great, thanks. My name is Jessie Abraham, planning consultant. I'll give a brief introduction on behalf of the District Community Development Department, and then I'll pass it off to the applicant team. So Garibaldi Springs Phase 3 proposes 123 townhouses. This is the third and final phase of the overall site development. A development permit for DPA 1 environmental protection was issued in 2021 for the overall site, including this phase. The proposed development application for Phase 3 brought forward today is subject to DPA 2 for flood hazard, DPA 3 for universal guidelines, and DPA 11 for wildfire hazard. The application was submitted prior to the DP Area 3 amendments and is subject to the guidelines at the time of application. Just want to note that two variances are requested. So the first is to vary the minimum driveway length from 6 meters to 0.7 meters. And the second variance is to vary maximum height from 10.68 meters to 16.4 meters. The proposed height variance is to accommodate the additional fill required on site to meet flood construction requirements. Development conforms to all other requirements of the RM4 zone and the land development agreement for Garibaldi Springs, which is detailed in attachment 2 of the report. This project has not previously been presented to ADP. Staff are generally supportive of the proposed development and are seeking ADP's further review and comments on the following, including landscaping. This includes planting locations, tree species, and soil volumes, as well as retaining wall design. Outdoor amenity space, including location of the common amenity outdoor space, location and coverage of bike parking spaces, as well as building form, including articulation and individuality of units and building colors. A summary of DP guidelines, including staff comments, is included in attachment 1 of the report. And with that, I'll pass it off to Ryan and the applicant team.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ryan Wanzik, principal and architect with Acoustics Architecture. Really happy to present to you Glen Wild, the third phase of development up at Garibaldi Springs. Flip to the next slide here. So we'll talk a little bit about the vision up at Glen Wild. So our vision is to transform this former golf course into an ecological preserve with expanded park, trail networks, and a range of housing options for growing families, professionals, and active retirees. Glen Wild specifically, it was to design a neighborhood pocket surrounded by nature in a minimalist mountain architectural styling. We are also looking to connect to the public and private multi-use pathway systems, connecting residents to each other, amenity spaces, play areas, active outdoor spaces, and gathering spots, both public and private, and to the surrounding bicycle and trail networks. We are also incorporating several sustainability measures to the community, including meeting Step Code 3, Net Zero Step 4, providing electric vehicle charging rough-ins in each home, and infiltration of stormwater to the site and reintroduction to the surrounding stream networks. So, there we go. Oh, okay, sure. We'll go back to architectural influences. So we're taking the cues for our architectural influences from the surroundings, but putting a contemporary twist on it. We're looking at a minimalist mountain architectural styling, focusing on simple, clean lines, distinct mono-pitch roof forms, paired with contemporary window forms and groupings to help identify the unique character. Fiber cement board and batten siding in natural colors, fiber cement horizontal plank cladding, thin walls, timber and glass canopies help create the exciting architectural character that Squamish is known for. The use of large glaze openings helps bring the outside in, further enriching the experience with nature. The entry experience at every suite is met with a contemporary door and unique canopy design. So just some samples of some of the inspiration we took when looking to create the design of these homes. So just a quick outline on how we chose to address color on this site. So we have 5 different color schemes. All colors kind of reflect the natural surrounding area. So we've selected, is that happening? Thank you. So we've selected very natural colors. Now, each of the 5 color palettes is applied to the building 2 different ways. So we have really 10 distinct color palettes that we've applied across the site. And we have 34 buildings across the site. So each color application really only appears on maximum 3 or 4 buildings across the site. So the color palette is quite distinct and unique. Maybe I'll quickly talk to further variations. So aside from the 10 color schemes and material applications that we have 2 unique entry canopies that are also applied to these buildings. The first one is a wood and glass canopy that is cantilevered from the building. The second is a flat roof entry canopy with timber beams and posts and exposed ornate connections. I should also note there are also 2 different door colors we're using across the color schemes, as well as 2 different garage door types. One standard garage door and glazed garage doors in key locations. To the next one. So just a overall kind of snapshot of where the development is in the overall Garibaldi Springs site. So Glenwild, like I said, is the final group of townhomes in the 120-acre Garibaldi Springs community. And we're providing 123 homes of varying sizes, including ground-oriented adaptable homes sited on the southern end of Garibaldi Springs. So we have 36 ground-oriented adaptable homes scattered across the site, meeting the housing requirements set out in the DPA. The planning has been designed to work with the unique shape of the site, which is certainly interesting. Connectivity to the adjacent trail networks has been accommodated with links through the community. A large outdoor amenity space has been provided at the entry of the site. This area was selected carefully to ensure accessibility to the space was achieved for all residents. The contemporary architectural expression has been threaded through all homes. Simple asymmetrical forms, large glazed openings that invite the natural world in, and crisp, clean details have been woven through all homes. Flip to the next slide here. So a closer look at Glenwild, just highlighting some of the key parts of the site. So our mailboxes are located off of the sidewalk up on Newport Ridge Drive. We have a centrally located garbage and recycling space that meets all requirements. All of our ground-oriented adaptable homes are located around the perimeter of the site. And then we have our outdoor amenity space and community monument right at the entry. So I'll turn it over to Travis to speak to the connectivity on the site.
Thanks, Ryan. I'm Travis, the landscape architect with Vander Zalman Associates. And I'll start with connectivity. I don't know if you noticed in this image here, we're developing on the literal heart of Squamish. The shape of the site. Anyways, so connectivity. The site's accessed by Newport Ridge Drive and has a sidewalk entry, and it has the Garibaldi multi-use pathway connection. This comes into the entry node where you meet the outdoor amenity space, and the pathway switches either north towards lots A and B or south down through our common internal walkway system over to the Coho Trail. Okay, focusing a bit more on the amenity space, as we noted, it's at the entry. So we see it as it sits behind the entry sign at this entrance gathering node. The amenity is ideally located as it opens visually to the north of the site and will receive full sun later in the day and also good afternoon sun as it's open to the north and west. This openness is in contrast to how many spaces are typically sited, what is often a remnant piece of land fully enclosed by townhomes. The adjacent townhome overlooks the space, as do the townhomes to the northwest on Lot C. The central location increases the eyes on the space by passersby and also increases its potential as a meetup spot. The L shape of the space provides two distinct areas for different groups, perhaps children in the main play space and dogs on the entry lawn. The entry to the space includes a seating plaza with a shelter and varied accessible seating, and then a traditional play area, which includes a playhouse, a compound robinia structure with slide, spinner, spring toy, and swings, as well as an open lawn beyond. While the play area is focused primarily on ages 2 to 5, the swing has one belt swing and one bucket swing, so that all ages can use the swing set and enjoy. And we see the open lawn as a flexible space for games. Finally, you'll see the picnic table in the north corner there. It sits away as a possible space for solo use or for other social groups who want to have their own space away. And we feel this layout allows opportunities for many groups to coexist. Pass it back to Ryan to talk more about the townhome unit types.
Okay, well, we'll get into the 3 different unit types that we are providing at Glen Wild. This is our A-type home. This home has been used on the previous 2 developments and is quite successful. So this is our traditional 3-story townhome layout with entry and garage space on the lower floor. The main floor has all of the main living spaces, including a den, and then the upper floor is where all the bedrooms are located. So these homes are 3-bedroom and are approximately 1,460 to 1,520 square feet. I apologize for the typo there. As I noted, these homes have appeared in the previous phases of Garibaldi Springs. We're also providing a private rear deck and generous yards for these homes. So these A homes will all, the garage and entry will face the Strata Road with balconies and yards off the rear. Moving on to a B-type home. So these homes are also a traditional 3-story townhome layout with the entry and garage space on the lower floor, along with a den. The main living spaces are located on the 2nd floor and all bedrooms are on the upper floor. The difference between the A homes is that the entries are oriented towards a mews walkway on the opposite side from the garage. These homes also feature 3 bedrooms and range from about 1,590 square feet to 1,675. These blocks have been kept to smaller numbers, 3 or 4 homes per townhome block. All homes have been designed with large yards at the front entries of the home, along with a rear balcony on the lane side. So using this home has allowed us to create kind of varying streetscape through the site because our entry is on the opposite side. So it's giving a little bit more variation as one would drive through the site. And moving on to our adaptable unit, ground level adaptable unit. So these are our C-type homes. They're 2-story and they're all located along the perimeter of the site. So they're the largest of the 3 home variations. The sizes range from 2,115 to 2,190 square feet, and they have a feel of a single family home. So they feature 3 bedrooms on the upper floor with an additional open concept living space up there as well. The adaptable living spaces, kitchen, bedroom, and bathroom are all located on the main floor. I'll just jump into a quick look at some of the plans. So again, I've noted we've provided a range of housing options here. So we've got, as I noted, the A, B, and C type home. And again, the larger one, very reminiscent of single family homes. The homes offer options for all sorts of demographics, further building on the diversity that makes Squamish unique. All floor plans place an emphasis on outdoor living with generous private outdoor spaces and access to nearby common outdoor spaces. Articulate facades with large windows provide abundant natural light while maximizing privacy. So again, this is our standard home. The A home has approximately 55 units across the site. Move back on to the B plan. So again, very similar as we kind of outlined earlier. Garage on one side, suite entry with a large front yard on the opposite side. 3 bedrooms upstairs, main living spaces on the second floor. Then we will move on to our C home, which is our ground level adaptable suite. So again, we've provided an adaptable bedroom, bathroom on the ground floor here. Access to these homes will not be impeded by any steps. We've designed them so suite entries are all accessible with accessible thresholds and meet all turning clearances.
That's good.
Okay. Typical site section, so you can kind of see what we're having to do to kind of fill the site in order to bring it up above flood construction level. You can bump into your landscape.
Sure, yeah. And we have a few extra sections here. Section 1 shows the continuation of the Garibaldi Trail between the townhomes. I'm noticing an error on this section. It says the trail is only 1.5 meters wide, but in our recent iteration, we've widened it to 2 meters, as you'll see on our plans throughout the site. The section 2 here shows a typical wall interface at the edge of the site. In some locations, it merely slopes to the existing grade. However, in others, there's a walled step in order to meet the flood level elevation needs. It's been recommended that we consider tiering the walls over the guideline, since we were slightly over the guideline height. However, we think a slightly higher wall that faces into the natural space with significant distance to residential neighbors is a better use of space and will have a minimal visual impact. Finally, you'll see the amphibian barrier that we're including around this site as a wildlife protective measure. Sometimes the barrier is against the wall and other times against the fence as required. This is what led to the solid board fence design to hide the view of the barrier. But we've opened it up at the top to try to minimize its impact so that people have a full view of the forest beyond. Back to Ryan.
Just a couple of quick photos for context of what the site looks like and its surrounding nature. So very heavily treed around the property. Flip it back to Travis to talk about plant.
Yeah, the planting palette for this project provides a mix of plants, evergreen, deciduous, and herbaceous. In planting design, we seek to provide visual interest, durability through a mix of plant varieties offering seasonal colors. We've avoided fir or fire-prone trees or shrubs and switched from using cedar and yew and opted instead for euonymus greenspire and boxwood for evergreen sort of hedging needs. We've also included ornamental grasses, which add a verticality and a lightness, and that's sort of a West Coast character of the planted spaces. Next, and then actually still here,
Okay.
sorry. And then regarding trees, the site, like Ryan mentioned, is surrounded by dense forest on most sides, with a mix of alders and conifers, etc. This provides a thick edge around the development, so we've opted to avoid planting trees on the forest edge yards to allow light and openness, and instead focused our tree planting more heavily in the center of the spaces. The district guidelines for placing conifer trees was followed, ensuring no conifer tree is closer than 6 meters to a building. For this site, 163 replacement trees are required, and 10 cubic meters or so volume is required per tree. This requirement has been met as demonstrated on our soil volume plans L02B and L02C. There is a near balance of native and non-native trees with 96 native trees and 105 non-native trees. That's right, we're required 163 trees, but actually planted 202 trees, so 39 bonus trees. And so while we are able to meet the development guidelines for all required replacement trees planted in the yards, we would also like to have trees located in the drive aisles. And so the greening of the drive aisles is an important, but also one of the more challenging aspects of the townhome typology. The spaces remaining between the driveways and entry paths do not allow for 10 cubic meters of soil volume per tree. The idea of providing soil cells in these areas was considered infeasible, as there is a host of utilities and hardscape interfaces in the driveway aisles, and also an approximately $10,000 cost per tree for full installation, implementing a plan like this. And that amount would then be directly borne by homeowners, increasing their unit costs. Alternatively, we've comprised a three-part plan to ensure that trees grow to a healthy maturity in the drive aisles. First, we have selected smaller habit and fastigia trees. Second, we are providing root watering irrigation to manage the hot and dry months. In many developments, only shrub irrigation is provided. However, deep root watering is really needed to fully satisfy the trees. And third, we will promote pruning of the trees to limit their scale and fit within close proximity to the buildings, ultimately reducing their mass and water and nutrient needs as they still grow to a maturity. In some ways, this is similar to street tree conditions on main streets, but much better with more soil and irrigation. Building on polygon success with planting trees in drive aisles, we believe this will allow the trees to grow and mature as an important environmental aesthetic addition to the neighborhood. That's the end of the presentation.
Thank you.
Already talked about sustainability, so
great.
we don't need to kind of go through that again, and then we'll leave you with a rendering of one of our muse conditions on the site.
Great, thanks very much. So we'll now offer each panelist an opportunity to ask questions of the design team, and then followed by a round of comments. So starting with questions, I'll go to the panelists online first. We'll start with Andrew. Do you have any questions for clarification?
I was curious, the central garbage, that's to service all of the units. Is it the comprehensive plan for waste management?
Sorry, I couldn't hear the last part of your comment there.
Serve all units?
It does. The main garbage room serves all units, yes. And it is centrally located.
Okay. With respect to the height variance, what is sort of the zero mark for measuring height here?
I can respond to that. So height as per the zoning bylaw is measured from the lower of existing or finished grade. So in this case is existing grade.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Thanks, Andrew. We'll go to Celso next.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation, guys. I have a few questions. One is, since we're starting to talk about floodplains here, I understand we did accept some variations for floodplains where the only use for the ground level were access to the upper levels and some laundry and stuff like that. I see that there are some dens and other uses indicated in the floor plans. Can someone from the city explain to me how exactly are we assessing the floodplain and the ability to actually comment on any variation requested to that purpose and what is the criteria? Sorry if I was not that clear, but I think you understood my question.
Thanks for the question. I'll just preface by saying that the development is required to meet the flood hazard requirements as per the bylaw, and they have prepared a flood hazard assessment for this development. So they will be required to meet those flood hazard mitigation measures. So at this time, we're not assessing the interior design of the buildings. They are required to meet those. mitigation.
So maybe I'm gonna rephrase my question. What is the criteria to accept the variation, the height variation? Because I see Dan here on townhouse type B, a lot more things on type C, which gets incorporated in the same. All townhomes are exceeding the maximum height originally by zone.
Sorry, I'm just going to jump in here. Jessie Fletcher, Manager of Current Planning. Jesse Abraham, can you confirm that the ground level is meeting the flood construction level and they're filling to that point, and then the height exceeds it because of how we collect or calculate height datum?
Yeah, correct. So there is a substantial amount of fill being provided on site, several meters worth, in order to elevate the living space above the required flood construction levels, which is required to meet the flood hazard assessment.
Okay, let me move up a bit. We talked about very generic sustainability strategies, which we see in pretty much every single project. Can someone from the design team list 3 more specific moves you guys did on the design of the building systems or whatever may be that will actually meet or exceed sustainability goals?
Okay, we are speccing a roof shingle to meet cool roof requirements. We are not using any gas appliances or heating equipment. Everything is electric on the site. Yeah, what else have we got? And we're using high efficiency heat pumps on the site as well.
Right, just to comment, those are pretty standard moves on every single project. I was hoping to hear something a little bit more creative and more specific, not only to the form and shape of the proposed townhomes, but also the context. But thank you.
Hey, just a quick, we're going to have a second round for comments. This round is really
Yes.
questions for clarification,
Sure.
but you'll definitely have another chance to offer those, the editorial in the comments.
My apologies.
All good. It's great content.
Was there any specific reason why pretty much all amenities were positioned on the entrance of the site, which it's outside of not reach, but not a close proximity of majority of the homes being offered?
The amenity straddles the 2 lots, lot C and B. That's one reason. Another one, as I mentioned earlier, is that it does then open up onto natural space versus being confined in the center of the neighborhood. So we felt that that's a strong point for making it feel like a much larger and more interesting space. And then finally, just that action as a node where people are kind of going in all directions, and the high visibility of the site, we think that will benefit the site as well.
Okay. I'm gonna keep it for now as far as questions to those. Thank you so much. I'll get back to some comments and later on.
Thanks, Celso. We'll go to Mio for questions next.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. Just a couple of questions from me. So I was wondering if there was, if you could speak to the rationale or the function of the interior walkway mews. I'm confused whether or not there's a driver for that and how those came to be.
Yeah, the internal muse just acts as more pedestrian-oriented movement through the site. If we could have widened one of the streets and put a walkway along the drive aisle, and that would work fine, but we felt that creating a longer sort of green way where you don't have to worry about interacting with cars, especially for children, moving through the neighborhood safely, that there's all kinds of benefits, more front doors to knock on, which is pretty uncommon for townhome sites. And so just those two aspects, I guess, yeah, safety off street, more experience of greenery, more experiences of front yards rather than just backyards. And yeah.
Okay, thank you. So there's not a code reason or something like that that was driving it. Okay. And then the second one was in the report to council, we saw there was a mention around a letter about the reduced growing medium volumes. And I was wondering if, having not seen that letter from the landscape architect to the city, if you could recap some of that rationale, please.
Okay. Yeah, the rationale is basically, I presented it in the presentation already. It was that we were being asked to provide 10 cubic meters for all of the trees we're providing, but that we don't think it's feasible to provide 10 cubic meters in the drive aisles. And so we met the guideline requirements, which is 163 replacement trees that have 10 cubic meters of soil. And then we have decided we want to provide over and above that amount. And so we would like to plant an extra 39 trees and manage them in a way that they will grow to a healthy maturity by providing irrigation, choosing the right kinds of trees, and offering maintenance advice to the strata so that they can grow and contribute to the streetscape. We don't expect them to be totally, fully, circular round trees like you'd find in the yards around the development, but we think it's a benefit to have street trees there. And if you just look around in any city, you'll see trees that have thinner canopies, narrower canopies, but they're still contributing. So that's the rationale.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Mio. We'll move to the panelists in the room now. Beth, do you have any questions for clarification?
Yes, thanks for the presentation. I'm just curious, could you pop up a drawing and just kind of clarify the extent of the retaining wall that we're being asked to comment on? That'd be really helpful.
Oops, where'd it go? This seems to be the best plan. It's kind of hard to see. For the most part, there are walls around much of the site. Where there aren't walls is on the east side, just below the aorta. Sorry, it looks like a heart. So on the northeast, where the thumb kind of ends, there's no walls all the way down to the bottom corner. So that part has a sloping landscape. Beyond that, we have walls everywhere. Where are they beyond the requirement? To be honest, I'm not 100% sure. I would guess in many cases. Yeah. Let's see here. I think they're the most severe on the southwest side,
Yeah.
which is facing a forest. You can see the residential lots approximately, I don't know, like 80 meters away through the dense forest. So I guess, yeah, we have over height walls, but they are surrounded by dense forest. And so I guess it's the question of whether you feel there's a visual impact to the forest.
And just to clarify, they all kind of face away from the usable spaces. So
Yeah, we're
the
on a
tiering would occur.
podium, like the whole project is
Yeah.
a podium, and then it steps down to the surrounding nature.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth. Luke, questions for clarification?
Thanks for the presentation. I'm just compiling up a couple of notes here. So there's a couple of things I didn't get a chance to actually see or I didn't see in the presentation. So could you clarify like the stair access between the development and the forest of where those thoroughfares are? I didn't see any detail on that.
So to there.
Oh, sorry, I'm assuming that there's a stair access. Maybe there's a ramp. I don't know.
Right, so in the south to the Coho Trail.
Yeah.
So it's just, do you know where that is?
Yep.
So the question is, how many stairs or,
What does it look like?
oh, what does it look like? You mean materially?
Materiality, stair design, guardrails. Is it like a nature path? Sorry if there's a drawing that I've missed, but
Right, you're right. We don't have a drawing for it yet. It's leading to a nature trail, so it's gonna have a nature aesthetic.
yeah.
You do have a drawing set. Gives detail.
Oh, okay, thank you. It's been a while.
I think given the grade change, given
Yeah.
we're filling the site to get above floodplain, it's almost impossible to get a ramp connection through there.
Oh, I'm not speaking for a ramp. I'm just wondering about, like, you know, how is it like 3 stairs? Maybe if someone's got the drawings, I could just quickly look at it. I'm sorry, I've missed it. Thanks, Carlos.
Oh, we have the detail, but we just have the
Yeah.
stairs to get right.
Like there's 3 on the page number on the landscape.
Okay. And then, okay, just to speak to the wall again, like I know the park edge that's there, there's a play area that's right on that north side. What's the treatment at that edge between the kids' play area and that drop?
We have a fence around the entire mini space, so that's a fence and guardrail, like the detail we showed. And then we have some plantings. Do we have planting? Let me just double check here. I think there's some planted edges there, but mostly it's nature beyond. So we kind of want people to just look out and see what's beyond the site.
Okay. And the kind of usable area that's out there, is there any like covered outdoor space? I didn't see any of that either. It was just more of an open lawn concept.
Yeah, we have a shelter at the amenity space,
Yeah.
but we don't have a physically covered space.
And then in the sections between the rear yards and the walkways between the buildings, I noticed the drainage was facing more towards the building. What are you doing to promote drainage at the building patios?
Typically, we'll be providing a French drain in those yards.
Okay.
We do that in all of our rear yards just to make sure we're not pooling water. We find that when you put lawn basins, the water just builds up in the lawn. So we'll have that, and we'll probably include a bit of a swale low point there in our technical drawing set.
And can you tell me like what sort of other considerations did you make to give a sense of delineations and ownership to those backyards between like the pathways and the patios?
Yeah, I think along the pathways, we used 1 or 2 rows of plants in front of a low fence to sort of give a nice landscaped edge to the pathway system and then the fence behind so that you kind of see through it. So there's a nice sort of, you're getting green on both sides of the fence. And as you can see, we've kept it fairly just lawn. Mostly we're trying to keep planting away from the buildings too because of fire reasons. So there's a few things going on there, but yeah, mostly just trying to maximize usable outdoor space for families. Yeah.
Okay. I also have a question about the visitor parking. Were any other kind of strategies considered? I know that they're kind of on these sites, they tend to be quite jam-packed, and I noticed they're like in between the buildings. Was there any other considerations given to try and give them a bit more space between the neighboring buildings?
We do have like we don't certainly have them between all buildings. We've tried to kind of minimize where we're putting them between buildings. We are providing a lot of pathway connections between buildings. So you will see kind of up on the northeast finger of the site, we do have a larger expanse of parking that was really just trying to get things to work best where we could get them to work. Also, we're providing 6 accessible stalls, which need a little bit more space for that. So
And we also alternated sort of groupings of parking so we could plant trees and provide greenery between. That's like you said, the north. And in the southeast, we have a fairly large green yard there that has no parking.
Thanks. That'll be all my questions for now. Thanks.
Thanks, Luke. Over to Carlos.
Thanks for the presentation there. Okay, so I guess my question, the first one, just like context-wise, the lands beyond, are those governed by a separate scope that's kind of already been approved under DPA 1? As far, or is it being untouched? Is it?
Speak to that.
Oh.
So in regards to the land surrounding the space, it's a park and ecological reserve that will be transferred to the district prior to DP approval.
Right, and are there any improvements associated with that, or is it kind of as is where is?
No improvements, no. There's some environmental work regarding the ponds nearby, but no change otherwise.
Okay. So then I guess when we're looking at these plans, and we look at, say, like the eastern edge, you have your backyards kind of to what I suspect is like PL or parcel PL, and then it kind of continues to slope away naturally. Right. And then like, will that just remain as, like, I'm sensing it's probably turf right now or former golf course?
What was the plan for those sloped off areas?
I think that'll be hydro-seeded with something. It wouldn't be turf, but it might be I guess, a seed mix.
Okay, perfect. And then is there any thought, I guess, maybe off that site or within it generally to like pollinators and pollinator mixes and things like that?
I mean, we could be including a pollinator mix for that seed mix. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay. And then I saw you bring up some precedent imagery of like minimalist roof forms. And then it seems on some of them, you've kind of got like a buildup, almost looks like a hardy buildup and then the roof form.
Yep.
Is there a reason why you went that direction and not just kind of more a linear clean line?
Yeah, we were trying to create that kind of strong visual line on there. So that build out then comes down into a thin wall.
Right. So,
So-
that would be like a hardy panel.
Yes.
With
Hardy
the
panel with
easy flash.
reveals all kind of painted to look the same, so it looks continuous.
Okay. Did you consider any like plexiglass or anything over top of the covered area at the playground just for extra rain cover?
We could consider that. We just hadn't considered it yet. Yeah, so it's a trellis item right now, but it could become a hard roof.
Okay. And then for the C1, C2 plan, did it change from the package that we had? It just looked a bit different on the screen. You
Nope.
pulled it up.
So back here.
I was like,
There we go.
my comment only makes sense for the article.
Actually, to be honest, sorry, it is a hard roof shelter. Sorry.
Hard roof?
Yeah,
Okay, great.
So we're just pulling this up here. Perfect. So this is the same plan that you received in your package.
Okay. Maybe I'm looking at an older version. That one. Oh, maybe can you go back to that one? That's the same one?
Oh, so that's an N version. You're seeing the middle. So we always provide a middle unit and N units. So
Yep.
the N units have bump outs on the side.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. No,
So
that
this
makes
is this is the kind of common internal unit.
perfect. That makes more sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so on that one, did you ever explore having a like a patio door at the family room to go out onto on top of the roof of the garage?
I know that's something that likes to get discussed, but
Yeah.
it's not something we've entertained. Polygon isn't typically keen on doing roof decks.
That's fair. Okay, and yeah, so I guess you're building the entire, my last question, sorry, building the entire site up. I know there's this discussion around tree, soil volume for trees. Is there any opportunity to integrate like more structural soil as you're building it up to kind of get that volume?
I use structural soil in projects. I typically, in a project that, in parking lots, in parking lots, when you have very regular things, you can get your 5 or whatever meters, and you can add more for structural soil. Structural soil is only good as a 4-to-1 sort of value, right? So, or a 1/4. So it's mostly rock.
Yeah.
So you need a lot of it, to actually entertain the volumes you're talking
10
about.
meters of soil.
Yeah, and the thing is, it also has like only a 1-inch sort of continuous access through it because it's crushed stone. So you don't really, you're going to get roots that go into it and they'll do something, right? But you're not going to get structural roots moving beyond your confined space anyways, right? So you can do it. It adds a level of complexity to the building process. And I don't think it offers the value of the things that we're planning to do. In my opinion, it makes a bit of a mess without offering enough value added in this kind of situation because we're confined by one site already with a building. So, and other probably utilities. So you start to lose out, and you put all this structural soil in the ground, like 5 or whatever, 10 cubic meters, and you get your 2 out of it. And it's like, okay, is that really worth it after all that work?
Right.
I don't think so, but.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Thanks, Carlos. And over to Michael.
Thanks for the presentation. I'm just going to carry on with the structural soil comment line. What is the volume of soil for those constrained spaces in the drive aisle?
I think it varies. So, I mean, probably between like 2 and 6 cubic meters or something like that, because we have so many different types of conditions. Yeah.
And are you selecting the tree species, whether it's 2 or 6 cubic meters?
We've
selected
tried to
tree species.
choose, all of the drive aisle trees are quite small. They're like Cercis canadensis, they're fastigiate trees. Let's see here. Sorry, I should have written down the list of the ones that are in the drive aisles. But I think we've got like Amelanchier canadensis, Cercis canadensis, the quaking aspen. So like most of these trees are all similarly small. And mostly we've also looked at the ones that are super fastigiate when we're getting closer to the buildings, because sometimes you're really tight on the buildings. And so that's one of our bigger considerations.
Have you considered any sort of tree protection for those drive aisle trees with people turning into the driveways and the garages?
We haven't really. I don't know, do you see a spot where you think I think like the spaces we have are somewhat wide. Like we don't have like 1 foot wide drive aisles very often, or like normally the small ones are often like 4 or 5 feet wide and 3 or 4 feet deep. So they're actually fairly well protected within the beds. I mean, there might be somewhere, but when I'm looking through right now, I'm not seeing spots that they appear to be like really in any kind of a hazard. And that's the thing, like we actually have pretty wide beds. Like sometimes they're like 8 feet wide, so that's like substantial compared to a lot of townhome projects. So I don't think that's an issue here.
Okay. And who are the primary users of the MUP that connects through the site? Is this going to be a main connection from the existing neighborhood to the Coho Park Trail?
Yes.
Yeah. So there'll be bikes on it.
Yeah.
Okay. And maybe this is a question for Jessie. Is there any leeway for the applicant to, within reason, sort of change the alignment of the Garibaldi path network?
Yeah, so this will be a key connection for the Garibaldi path that goes up to the other phases, but as well to other trails throughout the site. So it depends what you're thinking.
Okay. Should I say that now or in the comments sec time?
If it's going to clarify the intent of your question, that's probably all right.
I guess what I'm wondering about is with bikes moving through this site, I think I'm okay with the height of the retaining walls most everywhere, except for along the one stretch where the paths head north-south, heading north off-site, where it feels like the wall gets quite high next to the path there. And so I'm warning about, instead of changing the building and the yards, changing the path, like leaving the path a little bit to give a bit more space off the wall, and then maybe you can incorporate a little bit of plantings in front of the wall, just so it doesn't feel like you're against this a big wall.
Oh,
I
so
think
yeah, here.
it's almost
Right.
2.5 or 3 meters at one end.
Right.
And then kind of further to that is the alignment of the pathway connecting through the site and then off east towards the Coho Park Trail. I think there's a right angle corner through there with a privacy fence. And I'm just thinking about people on bikes moving through there, if there can be a little bit better flow through there. And I don't know if that means modifying that yard or what that could look like, but have you thought about, because I think that there will be a lot of users using this pathway through. And so making is going to be a common.
Isn't it right there?
Yeah, right through here.
Right. One thing I would wonder about is, will people on bikes actually bike this little internal network, or will they just bike down the street and then connect back up? I mean, if I was a cyclist, I would just ride down the street and then walk my bike down the stairs. But it's always very challenging organizing townhomes on a site, and especially when it's shaped like a heart. And so we've kind of opened that center space up as much as possible, and tried to orient the path in a way that's sort of off of the buildings as much as humanly possible. And we've tried to ease it so that it provides good sight lines.
I mean, we can certainly look at kind of angling off the fence of that yard to provide better visibility at those intersections for sure. Yeah.
Okay. I think I had a few other questions here. Bear with me. Did you consider, there's two other sort of larger landscaped areas in the site, one on the east and one in the west. They could be kind of like pocket landscape areas. Was there any consideration to making those additional amenity spaces?
You're talking on the northeast,
There's
or
one.
in the sort of the thumb zone, the hand?
There's one at the southwest.
Yeah,
end.
southwest, yeah.
Yeah. And then there's the other one that's sort of the northeast.
Yeah, okay. We hadn't considered that yet. We just tried to focus on the central network and a focal amenity space that met the space requirements. And by having these larger yards, it's allowing us to plant some larger trees as well, which is nice.
So that particular area you're referring to, that area has been left open for potential future access to the adjacent property. So that is still under negotiation and discussion with Polygon, but that's why we didn't specifically do any programmed amenity in that space.
In the southeast.
Yes,
Right.
southwest, right there.
Sorry, southwest,
Yeah.
yeah.
Would those trees, are some of those trees the actual replacement trees from, as per the bylaw, replacement trees? Because those would then probably not be able to be removed for future access. Yes.
I guess if we came to that point, we do have lots of yards we could be planting more trees in as a replacement. I think this is a hypothetical right now, right?
Yes.
It's not like a super probable, but those are, because they're in a big yard, we do give them more soil volume, so those are replacement trees. But I'm sure we could be replanting in many different yards if necessary.
Yep. And my last question is, so the pond is going to be filled and seeded. Are there environmental requirements about the reseeding in a different document or through different planning? Or is that part of this, that'll be filled and seeded as part of this phase of work?
So the environmental restoration is regulated through the DP Area 1 permit, which has already been issued. And so that's ongoing in the moment.
I'm good. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. So we've gotten through the questions. We'll now have an opportunity for each panelist to provide comments. I'll take note of them and try and summarize them at the end with to sort of summarize the ADP suggestions. Just a reminder, we're reviewing this project primarily against the Universal Design Guidelines. Staff has asked us in particular to consider articulation and distinct entries of the units as well. Consider tree location, tree species, soil volume, also the location and size of usable outdoor space. In addition, a couple of questions around alignment with the development permit area guidelines, including bike racks and the fact that they're not covered, accent colors on the buildings, the rock stack walls, which we've had some questions on, and then the location of the amenity space. So I'll go back to the panelists joining online, and we'll start on comments from Andrew.
I believe just as this is my first meeting on ADP, I think it would be best that I just abstain and observe.
Why don't I come back to you, Andrew? We'll start with some of the other folks and then give you another opportunity if you want to provide comments. We'll move over to, well, why don't we go in reverse order this time then? We'll start in the room here and we'll start with Michael on comments.
Okay. I guess I think I'm comfortable with the approach for the trees and the tree volumes. I think if there is any opportunity to add structural soil under paved surfaces within the drive aisle, that would be a benefit. But I think the approach seems acceptable. There were a few tree species on the list. The oak trees, the pin oak, they actually attract a lot of bears in this neighborhood. And so I would recommend looking for a different tree than the oaks with the acorns, because the bears love them. Also, there's the mountain hemlock. There's only 6 of them, but I'd suggest finding a different species because it's pretty shallow rooted and prone to wind throw and not the best for the townhome developments. I think in your plant list, you had the periwinkle shown, but it wasn't in your plant schedule and I didn't see it in the presentation here. So maybe that's been deleted from the project, but that's invasive and I wouldn't recommend using that here. I think I'd look maybe at potential opportunities to add additional amenity space spread throughout the site through those 2 larger landscaped areas. They don't have to be like full playgrounds, but you know, little seating areas or open spaces, areas for kids to dig or things like that would be, I think, beneficial to kind of disperse it throughout the site. Again, I think looking at potentially realigning the Garibaldi path network along the rock wall would maybe help that feel a little better from the pedestrian scale. And I would also look at making sure that the pathway through the site is fairly clear, whether it's for pedestrians or bikes. And if the bikes are meant to be going on the road, then, you know, make sure that is accommodated. But I think there will be a lot of people coming through, connecting through to that trail network through here. And to that extent, I would also look to see if there's any way of minimizing the stairs or making that a ramp or something, because there's going to be a lot of wheeled users, I think. And I think, yeah, your detail did show a covered roof over the picnic table, which I think, yeah, I would agree. I think it needs to be a covered, not just a trellis, but something that's going to protect from rain. And I'm going to leave it there for now.
Okay, nice. Thanks, Michael. We'll go over to Carlos.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, so I think in future it would help just to have some better context around lands beyond and maybe contour data, just to understand what those actual elevation differences are. I just want to say like the site or the type C unit, I think really fills a gap in the housing market for someone that's looking for like a more generous home, but doesn't necessarily want to be in a single family. And so I commend you for that. Making them adaptable is great with the potential for single floor living. Support the parking pad reduction, given that all the garages there are side by side as opposed to tandem. I don't even know if you're allowing tandem anymore, but at least like that's quite a nice garage layout to have. And so I think it's justifiable. Yeah, well, I feel associated with existing grade for height. I put, why is this a thing? So like very much support the height variance, but like why doesn't our zoning bylaw just allow for that by default? Because we live in a flood zone and when we're forced to fill it, shouldn't need to get a variance for that, in my humble opinion. And then caveat, I'm not a landscape architect at all, but I also struggle with this often requirement for cubic meters per tree. And the reason I struggle with it is because if you walk down Second, or if you go to Eagle Wind and you have these tiny little holes for trees, and they are massive and they're not fastigiate, and so they're growing into the buildings. And so we grow trees well here. I think more trees is better than less, so supportive of that. I think you should look into adding pollinators. Just generally, I think that's an approach that we should be utilizing in Squamish. And then just like a bit of just knowing the way that the kind of site ends along the west side and then kind of slopes down, spraying it with hydroseed or meadow mix or something like that, great idea. But I think ultimately, like knowing what happens in Squamish, quickly that will have cottonwoods and other trees kind of going in there, and now it's a sensitive ecosystem and we don't want to cut the trees. And so I think there needs to be some sort of plan there for how it's maintained and how it's either preserved in the state that it's handed over to the people that live there, or has a pathway to renaturalization or something, because there's potential for conflict there in the long term. For comments, thanks.
Thanks, Carlos. Over to Luke next.
Thanks. Yeah, I echo a lot of like those Carlos's previous comments as well, but I'll contextualize mine on basically, I guess, the location and the feeling of Squamish. So I'd like to see like this project differentiate itself a bit more from the High Line and the Sea to Sky development. Like, given that its location is like in the forest, you spoke to the forest and how there's like the existing lake there, which obviously that's all kind of changing. But I feel like the architecture itself doesn't quite respond as well as it could to that location, and it could be as simple as like the feeling of like the roof lines. I'd super support the height variance. I think that's a complete given. But like the amount of roofs maybe makes it feel a little bit busy, and some consideration of that articulation could help. It feels a little bit urban given its context. The variation in color palettes, great, and that's a nice touch. We've seen them like being quite successful in the Sea to Sky development. I think it helps to really break down the neighborhood as you're passing through this inherently urban area, which is actually in more of like a rural setting. Yeah, I think it could also help to soften it by bringing a bit more landscape. Really like the front entries and the garages on opposite sides, and that really helps to create more of a neighborhood feel. But it's awkward because I guess it creates like one of the symptoms of, or the effects of that is that it kind of creates more of a sterile road network, in that it's all asphalted, and it would be really great to see a couple more trees in there. But I understand that we're really struggling for the width, but any opportunity for trees there, and maybe it's about relocating some of those visitor spaces to bring in more greenery in those edges. Speaking more about the edges, the play area, I'd love to see a little bit like, given there's this kind of wall around the whole area, I just want to soften those edges a little bit more and see a bit more planting in those grade differences, and perhaps you can kind of hide them in that forest. Kind of like to Carlos's point about using some hydroseed in that area, it would be great to see those edges blur. And then also that connection between the walkways and the forest. Yeah, granted, you have a pretty straight run concrete stair running up there. Like maybe there's a way to soften that by breaking the stair up and create like slowing people down, the landings and that, bringing in more planting or different services. I think that's all for me. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, Luke. Over to Beth.
Thank you. I generally agree with a lot of the form and character comments that have been made so far. And just kind of without trying to duplicate anything and focusing on feedback sought, I didn't quite get to see where the Class B bike spaces were. However, agree, obviously, that'd be nice to have coverage, especially in this climate, if possible. In terms of articulation, I would agree with Luke that I don't think there's any additional articulation necessary. In fact, maybe there could be a toning down of some of the articulation and maybe a little bit of the softening of the complexity of the roof planes and the way that they meet as well. Just given that maybe the extended overhangs, unless they're serving like a shading function that wasn't immediately evident, I think that, they may not be serving any water protection. So it's something that could be actually kind of dialed back a little bit for the context. I think the units are delineated in terms of their individuality from one another quite fine. And I agree that the color palette is appropriate for the neighborhood as well. I think there was some mention of like forest cabbage color mentioned at one point, but it resonates, like I see it and it makes a lot of sense. The retaining wall design, it would be great if there were ways to look for opportunities to soften the edges, but I don't necessarily see that there's a requirement to tier them in particular, the way that the district was asking. And with respect to the play area, I don't have any objection to the location of the play area. You see it in a few places in Squamish as well at the opening to the community, I think like Ravenswood and other places like that. And it seems to function quite successfully. So no objections to that. That's everything. Thanks.
Thanks, Beth. So we'll go to the online panelists. Mio is up next.
Sure, thank you again for the presentation and just a few comments from me. So I guess around growing medium, I would be inclined to support relaxing the 10 cubic meter minimum set out by the district for the trees that are in excess of what is required. And with the note that they should meet the minimum growing medium depth from the Canadian landscape standard as the new minimum is what I would recommend. And then I think there are some, well, I'm a bit of two minds around the sidewalk muse situation. I think, yes, other people have pointed out it does create a unique opportunity and experience there. But then when it comes to, say, safety, it was mentioned, oh, it's an opportunity to keep kids off of the road. But then, that could be sort of multiplied where people are like, there's never kids on this road and end up driving faster. And it's not, not that I'm trying to get kids on the road, but I just, there is a little bit of like a potential issue with kind of that, I guess, with in terms of safety, or there's another side to that coin. So I think just in general would suggest the opportunity to explore and enhance like the pedestrian experience on sidewalks so that anybody using the roads like a sidewalk or walking on the roads rather than the back sidewalks would have more of like a pedestrian oriented experience. And then also in that consider people with mobility limitations. I think it would be a bit of a challenging role on roads to say the central area there, just feeling very secondary to cars. I know that's a very constrained space, but it's just something that stuck out to me. I would, as a non-architect, echo Beth's comment that, there could be potentially less articulation there. I think this ties back into the pedestrian-oriented experience, or maybe more of a relationship to the street, where there's an opportunity to potentially simplify some of the articulation there, and in that to give a little bit less prominence to the garages. There's several ways that could be done. I'm seeing some ways where potentially the canopy over the front door entrances could, that elevation could be carried over to the garage and kind of reduce some of its prominence, for example. And then my final comment is around the amenity. I have no issue with that location. I think that having it centralized makes sense, just in as a sort of center to the development. I see that there are 2 lawns there. I think there's an opportunity to potentially combine them and have a larger contiguous green space, just to increase, the usability of it. And then, or like conversely to that, just being able to, rather than having 2 separate, non-connected lawn areas, potentially adding in more playground equipment that could be challenging for or of interest to a child of an older age group, just to allow kids to kind of grow into that space or with that space, with that amenity. So that's all for me. And yeah, thanks again for the great presentation. I'll pass it along to the next person.
Thanks so much, Mio. So we'll go to Salso now for comments.
Thank you, guys. Just to let you know, I was happy to see that there is no boo on the reaction, because I might not be the most popular guy on ADP today. I have to say that there's a missed opportunity here to really do a great thing and meet the guideline requirements under 3610, which I'm not going to read all over to you guys, but we talked about articulation, variation, roof extensions to which is in guidelines to try to reduce the height of buildings and whatnot. And I really think that we are, due to even the very long series of buildings along the streets, and the architects, and I don't know if there's someone from Polygon, please, I do understand all the economics on the development, so don't shoot me, but we're here just to enforce some guidelines that the city put together. So I think there's a very long stretches of, and I'm going to apologize for the word I'm going to use here, but monotonous, repetitive type of buildings. I went through your architectural drawings, and if I go from page 77 to all the way 128, and I flip it through, I can't barely distinguish one building from the other. In terms of colors, I myself see 2 colors. One is brown, the other one is gray. There's some different tones, but it's still 2 colors for me on 30 some odd buildings. Responding to the questions from planning, yes, I think we lost the opportunity here, missed the opportunity to have more interesting and individual designs, and not only 2 or 3 doors, combination door, garage door, and canopies. And I think, and I agree with, I think Beth and Luke said something. It's almost too busy, but then in the end of the day, all buildings are the same with very few variations. I would have preferred to see less articulated buildings, but more variation. That's why I wrote here articulation versus variation, 2 completely different things. And I think the project proposed design mix a little bit and create a very monotonous set of long buildings along long stretches of streets that I really don't support much. My apologies. The one big thing here I saw is we've been always talking about, I asked in the first round, I asked the question. It sounds like 90% or 95% of the building cladding is fiber cement, which is not really considered to be a green material. Again, it's absolutely the same material used throughout 30-some buildings in a slight variation of colors and tones. The guidelines for roofing, let me just go back here, 3611, right? Yeah, it talks about roof forms are encouraged to reduce the apparent height and massing of buildings. Roof lines should accent, not obscure important views. So I think the project is doing the absolutely opposite of that. Looking at the ADP booklet you guys have on page 11, 12, 13, no, sorry, 10, 11, 12. Roofs, details, window layouts, everything looked to me exactly the same. And I completely don't understand why the US chose to extend that roof on one plane only, that the only thing it does is actually provides a more height visually to the buildings and don't help much really breaking them down in more different and personalized townhomes. I'm having a little, forgive me if it's a little personal thing, but I think we're building in non-urban or proposing to be the non-urban areas, something that like it's bringing all the urban aspects of a city and whatnot into a less urban area where people, I would think, would prefer to be able to find their homes looking a block away without looking for the address. And my apologies, guys. I really feel that it's a very monotonous two-tone or two-color, probably two tones within the color. Very, very little opportunity or proposal to use different materials. The roof lines to me are exactly the same all over the place, stretching the buildings up and with a narrow street section that is provided, which I'm not opposing to, but then you put your foot by just creating a much taller building that completely obscures, which is what we're seeing here, obscures the views that people would have from within the development of this beautiful Squamish.
Thanks, also. I think I've been able to capture that, and I'll summarize all the comments in a moment here, and maybe you can just confirm that I've captured your comments accurately enough at that point.
Absolutely, and my apologies for the long.
Not at all. Not at all. It's important for sure. Did you have any more comments to make?
I had some with regards to common lighting, some landscape and whatnot, but I'm going to leave those to the experts. They approve, they liked, have some suggestions that I'm going to just fall back a bit.
Okay, super. Thank you. And we'll just go back around to Andrew after hearing the comments from all the other panelists. Has it inspired any from you?
I do actually believe it has. Celso, I appreciate you providing a differing opinion to the group here. I think I actually do agree with the majority comments here that there is a lot of there's a lot of color variation. We do have 10 color schemes repeated across. Excuse me if I get the amount wrong, approximately 30, mid 30 buildings. So that's sort of 3 to 3.5 color schemes per building. And I do believe that there is 3 building types in what is, not a sort of a medium-sized development here. I think it's important that we recognize and optimize for building housing. And so the major cost implications with not repeating designs and having very, very unique buildings are only extended to the end user. So with that, I think that there is a good quantity of variation suitable and striking sort of a middle balance between some variation and not making the project too onerous.
Okay, super. Thank you. I'll try and give a bit of a summary of the themes of the comments. If I miss important things, please let me know. Oh, go ahead, Jessie.
Sorry, just to pass on, we have a comment from Sarah Tiffler, one of our members who wasn't able to join today, and she would just like to add that the development permit ensure that all outdoor furniture accommodate wheelchairs and those with mobility disabilities. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessie. Okay. So I will try and give a quick summary of the major themes from the panelists' comments. If I miss important points, please jump in and let me know. And then following that, we will look at our options for a decision. So generally, considering the questions from that were posed by staff, the panel felt that on a unit level, the articulation and distinction of each unit was reasonable and even suggested consideration of softening the articulation. I think in contrast to that, there were some questions about the distinction on a building scale and potential for the banks of townhouses to appear a little bit monotonous and not adequately varied one to the other, both in terms of materiality, color, and so on. In terms of the retaining walls, I think we heard that there wasn't a whole lot of concern about the height, but the panel suggests that the applicant and design team look for opportunities to soften those edges, including adding planting and greenery along the retaining wall edges. We didn't hear too much concern about the height variance requirement, except that there was a suggestion that the roof forms kind of accentuate the height rather than minimize it. We didn't hear any concern about the requested variation to the driveways from 6 or 7 meters down to 0.7 meters. Generally, there wasn't too much concern with the color palette, apart from a suggestion that it was perhaps a bit monotonous across the entire neighborhood. And then there was some suggestions around the planting species. So we heard not much concern about the question around soil volume for the trees. There was a suggestion that structural soil is used where possible. I think generally there was support from across the panel for maximizing the number of trees, enhancing the amount and connectivity of the usable outdoor space. In terms of species selection, there were some good advice to avoid bare attractant species and shallow rooting tree species, and to avoid anything that isn't invasive, and as well to look for opportunities to include pollinator species in the planting selection. And then I think there were some really great comments in terms of circulation. So looking for opportunities to enhance the pedestrian experience, considering particularly that this neighborhood will see through traffic with folks either, walking or cycling or otherwise moving through the neighborhood. So the wayfinding should really consider that, and the sort of connectivity of pathways. There's a question or a sort of a suggestion from the panel to really look at the stairway connection and think hard about accessibility and opportunities to improve that. And then the question around the play area, we didn't hear much concern about the location, but there were some suggestions that you look for opportunities for more contiguous open space within the play area, look at speccing equipment that would appeal to older children. And then I think a really important suggestion to look throughout the neighborhood for more opportunities for outdoor space that could be programmed and really made to be inviting for residents. Okay, so if I captured at least enough of the comments from the panel there. Oh yeah.
Sorry, I had one more comment that I didn't share, but I
Yeah.
was reminded of it. With the lawn areas, there's a few I was looking through, but I think applicants should just double check that that there's still a way to get a lawnmower into the yards if there's a car in one of the visitor parking spots, because some of those accesses are in there. So I know people will be parking there when the landscape crews come by, and if they can't get their lawnmower back, then that will be challenging. There's one area that's sort of an insulated lawn. It has some planting all the way around the perimeter and then a wall. So I'd maybe suggest flipping that so that the shrub plantings at the back and the lawns at the front, or just having it all shrubs. But yeah, just to check for that.
Okay, great. A couple additional suggestions that really relate to like the function of the space and thinking through the strata, like post sale, what the strata is going to have to deal with. So that's awesome. Okay, so as always, we are provided with 4 potential recommendations. So one is A, that the advisory design panel supports the project as presented, does not need to see it for further review. B, that the advisory design panel supports the project in general, would like the applicant to work with staff to resolve the recommendations of the panel. C, that the advisory design panel would like the applicant to resolve the recommendations and return to present it again. And then finally, that there is no support from the design panel. At this point, could I have someone move one of the potential recommendations?
I'll move B.
Okay, so in the room here, we have Carlos recommending that the advisory design panel support the project in general and would like the applicant to work with staff to resolve the following recommendations. I presume maybe those could be the ones that I just summarized a minute ago. Could I have someone to second that recommendation? I see Celso with the second there. Thank you. Any comments on this? We'll take it to vote. All in favor of recommendation B? Anyone opposed? Awesome. Okay. That's fantastic. Thanks, everybody. I think with that, I will ask for someone to move termination of the meeting. Luke, seconded by Carlos. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next month.
We pulled it together there, John.
Oh, yeah. Thanks. Right. You think I was